I feel like there's a very, very strong possibility that what we're doing now will be, later down the line, obviously, but regarded as the golden age of the X Division or the golden age of Impact Wrestling.
Speedball Mike Bailey is one of those wrestlers that you feel simultaneously everybody's talking about, and at the same time, sometimes it feels like not enough people are talking about. He is proficient in martial arts, he's a staple on the independent circuit, and right now is fast becoming Impact Wrestling's most talked about superstar. Next up, there's a huge match against Will Ospreay at Multiverse United. Only the strong survive. These two have battled many times before, but it will be their biggest battle yet. In the press release that we were sent from Impact Wrestling, Bailey said, Will Ospreay is the best professional wrestler in the world after me. So this will be the best professional wrestling match of the year. Very difficult to doubt that. What are your feelings heading into this big match?
Yeah, I think that Will Ospreay is. So there's a little caveat to that quote that I should mention, and it's the very controversial opinion, or at least sometimes very controversial, that professional wrestling in 2023 is the best that it's ever been. And there's all this discussion of what was the golden era of professional wrestling, and I am a firm believer that it is right now for so many reasons. Like one of the main reasons being inclusivity and the fact that anyone can be a pro wrestler now, and it's not only reserved to a very specific group of individuals. That counts for a lot. But also, I think that access to information and access to professional wrestling, I think the fact that all of the pro wrestlers in the world can watch all of the pro wrestling in the world and learn from that just makes presenting something exciting and dramatic to the audience just a little bit easier. And I think that right now, Will Ospreay puts on the best matches out of anyone right now. And I think that about myself as well. However, that's obviously a biased opinion because I wrestled the way that I like. You know what I mean? I think part of your journey as a professional wrestler is learning to be in control, right? That's art as a whole, but being able to see the kind of art that you want. Like it's easy to imagine a very good painting, but to actually make that painting happen is a very difficult thing. Well, I've been doing professional wrestling for a long time, so by now I'm able to envision a match and how it's going to look and actually make that happen. And I'm in control of that. So of course I make my favorite kind of wrestling. So it makes sense that I would think that my matches are the best. But the Will Ospreay one is a pretty, I think it's a lot of people argue, but it's a pretty objective opinion, according to me. I mean, you cannot argue with the results he's been having. So in my mind, there's a very good chance that we'll put on the greatest pro wrestling match of all time.
And it's interesting you mentioned that. I mean, you were the X Division champion. And when we talk about the X Division title, one of the main things that everybody brings up is that there was a golden age of the X Division, right? Like you must have heard that so many times. But now that you say that you are living in the golden age of pro wrestling, do you think it measures up to that golden era, so to speak?
So I absolutely think it does. I mean, I think with any kind of golden age ideology, there is a lot of nostalgia associated with that, right? People think like, oh my God, like the AJ Styles versus Samoa Joe versus Christopher Daniels one is one that people point to as like, man, like no one from X Division has accomplished what AJ Styles has and had the kind of career that Samoa Joe has had or left the kind of legacy that Christopher Daniels is leaving right now. But like the answer to that is just give us some time. But I do believe that I had an excellent X Division 3-way match. It probably doesn't compare to the Joe Daniels and AJ Styles match because it was a lot shorter and not a main event and treated very differently. But me, Ace Austin, and Trey Miguel had an excellent 3-way match, and I think that those are three names that really, really exemplify what it is to be an X Division wrestler right now. And I mean, and the answer to that being a golden age is just give us time. I can't imagine that 5, 8, 9, 10 years from now people won't look back on a match like that and go, oh my god, I can't believe that we had those three massive wrestling superstars in a ring at the same time, because it's gonna happen. I mean, Ace Austin gets better by the second, as does Trey Miguel, and as I try to. So I mean, I feel like there's a very, very strong possibility that what we're doing now will be, later down the line, obviously, but regarded as the golden age of the X Division or the golden age of Impact Wrestling.
Very hard to dispute that. But were these men that you just mentioned, like AJ Styles, Christopher Daniels, Samoa Joe, did they form the foundation of your style, or was it someone else that you were inspired by?
So they absolutely did. I mean, guys that I was like influenced by directly, like Amazing Red, who was a big part of the X Division, and Low Key as well. Matt Sydal, who had who spent some time in Impact as well, were guys that I started watching when I was seriously thinking about becoming a professional wrestler and really thinking this is the style that I like, the X Division style, the fast-paced, action-packed. But I'm also sure that they had people that they looked upon in a similar way. One of my early favorite wrestlers was Tiger Mask 1, mostly because of his matches with Dynamite Kid, a very long series of matches that started in, when was the first one? I'm trying to remember. Like mid to late 80s, I would think.
I think 81. If I could be wrong, but I think very early in the 80s.
Right, very early in the 80s, but that was like when that style was just starting to get popular, right. And a lot less grappling based and a lot less, mat based, and maybe taking some realism away from matches in favor of, high flying and action and awesome martial arts, which is, like I'm sure they had inspirations as well. I'm sure if you ask Tiger Mask who inspired him to wrestle the style he did, you'll just get a long chain going back to God knows when.
Absolutely. No, and you also mentioned inclusivity in wrestling, which brings me to a very interesting tweet that you put out that everybody's talking about. You want to face Mercedes Mone. You put that out into the world.
Of course.
How do you think such a match would play out, and why do you want to face Mercedes?
So it's happened, right? That someone from, one of the world's most famous wrestlers will get released or will now have the option, and then all those dream matches will pop up. But I feel like there's been a gender barrier to that historically. And I think that a quote, someone who's, I'm with Impact, but I am also, I take a lot of bookings for independent promotions. And so I have a much more open field of possible dream matches. And I feel like someone like Mercedes Mone, being able to wrestle literally whoever, and wrestling someone like me would be a big deal. Much like I wish that when, let's say, Trish Stratus ended her tenure with WWE, she could have wrestled anyone. Because I can imagine, like, even then, like we talked about AJ Styles, like Trish Stratus versus AJ Styles would have been an absolute banger, and I would have loved to see that.
It totally would have. But now that Mercedes is in New Japan and we are talking about these dream matches, maybe that could happen at some point down the line. Hopefully it does. The other big match that everybody's talking about from that event is Josh Alexander, who you faced in that recent classic, and against Kushida. Are you looking forward to this match as well?
I am absolutely looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to watching as a fan, I do believe that Josh Alexander he's the greatest world champion right now, in my opinion. Out of all the world champions of professional wrestling, Josh Alexander, to me, is number one. And to see him go up against Kushida, who is so well-traveled, so impressive. Like, I think being a good wrestler, a huge part of it is finding out who you are and figuring out your strengths. And I think Kushida is an absolute master at that. He knows what he does, and he does it super well. And it's always amazing to watch. So I look forward to seeing that one.
And you mentioned Josh Alexander, and the cool thing is, if you look across any promotion right now, there's a Canadian guy on top. You represent Canada. Literally every promotion has a Canadian guy on top, and maybe this is the first time this is happening since, I don't know, the Hart Dynasty ruled the world. No, you had Edge and Christian in the middle and all of that.
Yeah.
But what about the whole Canadian revolution? Why is it happening in 2023 so much?
Honestly, I'm not sure. There's always been great Canadian wrestling, but I remember, like, it's grown a lot and it's changed a lot. And I think but this is not even like, so when I talk about wrestling being the best it's ever been, I think Canada is on the winning end of that right now, because it's close to America, it's possible. And I think right now what we're seeing is Canadians starting to get discovered as it becomes easier to put yourself online. And I think Kenny Omega's story is very interesting in that it all started off with one random video that he sent to DDT in Japan that started his whole story. I don't know if you're watching this and you're unfamiliar, look it up. It's great. He just literally wrestled his friend in, like, basically a backyard, and that's got him to DDT and then New Japan and now AEW. But Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, whose story I'm extremely familiar with, they were the first. When I started wrestling, they were the first people in a very, very, very long time who were able to break out of Canada and were able to travel. And because before that, because of, the lack of social media and the territories being all swallowed up, there was a big dark period for Canada where it was literally impossible for independent promoters to get any visibility. And as social media started happening, as independent wrestling started growing, so did Kevin Steen and El Generico. And I think it's working out super well for Canada right now. But I think when the world discovers the amount of talent there is in, let's say, Italy or France or Singapore, I think the world of wrestling is about to just keep going more and more international. And I'm very glad it's working out for Canada right now, because there's a lot of great Canadian talent that is super deserving of being highlighted. And I think there's even more amazing Canadian wrestlers that people don't know about. But I think the future of wrestling is international.
For sure. So now let's, when I told my staff that I'm going to be talking to you, all of them mentioned the pit fight, right? Like, that's become synonymous with you lately. How did the idea of a match with no ropes come about?
So it was actually Kenny's idea. It was Kenny King's brainchild, I believe, to do something like this. But we both have martial arts backgrounds, and the idea was to give a format where I could let out my aggression and be unrestricted, as Kenny had been trying to really bring out of me. And I couldn't be happier with the result. Honestly, the whole look of everything, the unsung hero of the pit fight is Center Stage, which is that venue in Atlanta that's very much like pit shaped. It curves towards the center with high rafters, and it's small and dark, and it made everything look so beautiful. The way that we did the entrances as well, coming out from the little like doors underneath, and they put on the black canvas, and the way it was presented on television looked fantastic. I mean, this is really one of those occasions where Impact really set the stage for us to absolutely knock it out of the park. And it is maybe it's hard to top that hour-long match I had with Josh Alexander, but that could very well be my favorite match in Impact Wrestling.
Amazing. No, even the gear that you wore was so appropriate, right, for this match. Was there an element of, Street Fighter maybe, or Karate Kid, or maybe Ricky the Dragon Steamboat in that gi that you were wearing?
So there absolutely was. I mean, it was a love story to traditional martial arts and the old martial arts media and how it was presented in the 80s in a very over the top kind of kitsch comical way, which is very easy for me to lean into, but I also at the same time try to stay away from it. And I don't want to look over the top and too gimmicky. I used to wrestle in a full Taekwondo uniform and a full debuk just for pro wrestling matches. But I want to be taken seriously as a professional wrestler who does martial arts and not as a martial artist who ended up in professional wrestling. But I think this match was the time to just show our love and appreciation for all the great martial art media that has made us who we are now.
Amazing, man. So we are also here to promote the Impact Plus app. And one of the great things about the Impact Plus app is that you can go back in time and watch any great X Division match or any pro wrestling match from Impact Wrestling's history. So you already mentioned AJ versus Samoa Joe versus Daniels. That's out. If you had to pick one more match, what would you pick?
Oh man, that's a very hard one that I'll have to think of. The Motor City Machine Guns versus Generation Me in the Ultimate X is probably my most watched Impact match in history. In what was a very, very underrated period of Impact Wrestling, as I'm sure there were. There are many periods of sorry, Impact and TNA that were like taken over by some very specific elements, and so a lot of stuff that happened in the undercard is easily forgotten. But man, is there some fantastic hidden gems in the Impact library.
I think by the time this interview comes out, it should come out before your match against the Motor City Machine Guns, where you are teaming up with Jonathan Gresham, if I'm not mistaken. Could you preview the match for our audience?
That's right. Well, so basically, Jonathan Gresham has come to Impact looking to fight the best, and he called me out, and I accepted his challenge. So we'll be wrestling each other at No Surrender. Ahead of our match together, we're going to be teaming up against the Motor City Machine Guns, sort of testing the waters, which I think is like 4 of the best wrestlers in the world in a tag team match. I mean, you can't argue with that. Alex Shelley and Chris Sabin, who have been with Impact forever and are just absolute world-class talents. And, me and Gresham, I think, is the match that everyone wants to see. And I am just as excited for it as I hope everyone else is.
Amazing. On that final note, so growing up, I think a lot of people, both of us had quite similar experiences, but we were always thinking about what it would be like to have, a WWE or a WCW versus a WCW match, or say even a TNA versus WWE match at some point. Now we are finally getting that with Impact Wrestling and New Japan. Would you like to preview this event, and why do you think the idea of people from 2 different promotions is so exciting for fans?
Yeah, of course. New Japan has a very, very specific style, right? There is a style of wrestling that the New Japan wrestlers have cultivated, and there's a lot of like super rich culture in New Japan. That's why I love those matches so much, and I love that promotion so much. And I think that Impact right now is just a roster full of people trying to prove themselves. The entire Impact roster has a chip on their shoulder, and that's why what happens in Impact is so good, and it's so good for different reasons and in different ways than why what is happening in New Japan is so good. I hinted at Will Ospreay being the best wrestler in the world. They're putting on some of the best matches right now. Josh Alexander is, of course, not far behind, and they could not be more different performers. Something like Jeff Cobb and Moose, I think, is extremely exciting for the very, very same reason as well. We're going to see, so it's not only like a Forbidden Door matches you wouldn't think would happen type deal. But I think it's also going to be a super fun clash of styles to watch.
My final question to you. You had that match against Josh Alexander. You said it might be your favorite Impact match. Do you want a world heavyweight feud with him in the future? And do you hope to be the man who actually defeats him to take the title from him?
Of course, that's the goal. That's my goal. Many people asked why I didn't cash in option C when I was X Division champion. My reason is because I wanted both. I want both titles at the same time. But I'm not fussed about which one comes first. I mean, I won the X Division title at the 20 years Slammiversary in an Ultimate X match. And there's no better way to win the X Division championship than that. I couldn't think of a better way to win the Impact World Championship than taking it away from the man who holds the longest title reign in Impact Wrestling.
Amazing. That was so cool. Thank you for your time. Do you have a message for your fans in India, maybe?
Oh, fans in India, well, thank you so much for your support. If you're not familiar with me, then one of my favorite things about working for Impact is that they've put out a lot of media out there for free. So go on YouTube, put in Speedball Mike Bailey, and please watch some stuff. And if you like it, share it. If not, that's okay too. But that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you guys so much.
No, I'm sure they're familiar with you because Impact airs to millions of houses on Eurosport, which is one of the channels in India. So everybody gets to see you every week. So that's really cool.
Awesome. Well, I hope so.
Thank you so much for your time. I hope to see you.
Thank you, my friend.
Bye.